Alright guys, this is my 1959 reissue Les Paul. It's a 2019 model. This video is going to be Marco and I just kind of going over our guitars, giving you some of the specs, giving you some of our impressions, things like that. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible. So I'm going to get right to it here. First thing I'm going to talk about, that headstock logo. Logo is much better than it was in the past. I think they've been doing this maybe for a year or so now. What they improved for this year was the Les Paul script on there. It's actually more of like a spaghetti script. So it's a little bit thinner like you would have seen in the 50s, kind of cool. Doing the nylon nut again this year, blank truss rod cover. The nylon nut's actually a pretty important factor. Tone-wise, I'm not sure how much, but it said that it does affect the tone, so we'll, that's yet to be determined by myself. Rosewood fingerboard this year. They've got Indian rosewood. They've got Bolivian rosewood, or Palfaro, some of you guys know it. I know that Gibson's trying to source the dark stuff. Talked to a few guys in the Facebook groups. Looks like most of them, and I'm in agreement, think that this is Indian rosewood, so I'm 99% sure. The inlays on this one are awesome. So they've actually got the coloration a little bit closer to the 50s. I compared this, my buddy Zach has a couple of 50s Gibson guitars, and we compared the inlay color, and it's pretty dang close. So that's a pretty rad feature. Not going to affect your tone or anything, but at this price point, it is a very nice feature. So coming down the guitar, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm just going to work my way from top to bottom here. The next thing I want to talk about is the switch tip. So if we get in on that bad boy right there. This is a feature that Gibson got right and that Gibson got wrong this year. Color looks good, but I don't know if you guys can see it right around here. There's a very faint line. The originals did not have this, so I think this is just a product of the manufacturing process Gibson is currently using. Once again, not going to affect the tone and nothing most people are going to notice, but just something to point out. I had a hard time finding a whole lot wrong with this guitar, so I figured it was only fair. Coming down, you got the true historic plastics. Once again, not going to affect the tone, but at this price point, pretty rad feature. The pickups. Very nice patina on the VOS finish on these pickups. They use the A3 magnets in the custom bucker this year. And these pickups are low 8, high 7 range. They're actually really close in resistance to one another. So I found that kind of interesting. Unpotted for the first time this year, which is fantastic. It's a little bit closer to the real PAFs. And I can tell you that it does make a huge difference, at least to my ears, in the tone. I can hear more harmonics, the pickup's more responsive, more lively. So, and I probably couldn't tell the difference between unpotted and like a lightly potted pickup, but I can tell the difference between the unpotted and like the vacuum potted pickups, which does make a big difference to me. So, coming down, we got the ABR1 bridge. We got the top wrap going on. Yeah, I know. Every time somebody mentions top wrap, it's like, oh my gosh, not another top wrap conversation, so I'm not going to have it. I will say on this guitar, top wrapping probably isn't necessary because they got the neck angle correct. So you still get that slinky feeling if you don't top wrap, but now I've got sort of a double slinky feeling because it's top wrapped. So I do like that. As far as the sustain, that's not really why I do it. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, so I'm not going to harp on it. Other thing I'll talk about too is just the top. Mine's probably a little bit more unrealistic for what a 59 would be. I actually don't necessarily buy these guitars because they're supposed to be exact recreations or clones of the originals. I do get that sense of like nostalgia when I think a lot of my heroes played these guitars, and these guitars are built to be like that. I do get a little bit of that nostalgia and inspiration, but I just buy them because they're what I look for in a Les Paul. They're solid, they're light, they're extremely resonant, and they just sound amazing. And they're a little bit more consistent in the quality, I think, than other things that I've tried. So, and I just love the sound of a Les Paul. So to me, these are like the quintessential Les Pauls, at least as far as what you can get today. So I do like that quite a bit. The top, like I said, the top, probably unrealistic. There may have been a couple of really figured 59s, and I normally don't go for these super figured tops, but man, this one just jumped out at me, so I had to pick it up. And it, as soon as I played it, I knew I was buying it. I wasn't even there to buy a Les Paul. So the only other things I would really talk about, these are built with all hide glue. Once again, that seems to be another point of contention, but I can tell you, I compared this to my other R9, and I think the big difference may have been the hide glue. I'm not sure. This one just blew it out of the water as far as harmonic content and resonance. So, you know, the hide glue, it's a little bit different than the tight bond in the way that it dries. It creates more of a rooted connection between the pieces of wood, and it dries hard like crystal or like glass. So I would assume it transfers vibration better, or at least acts as a decent inertia block. So that's something to consider as well. The only really other things I'd mention about this guitar, I'm not going to go too deep. There'll be some other sections later, but this is by far one of the best Les Pauls I've played, and I'm not just saying that because of the price tag or anything. If I pick up a guitar and it doesn't impress me, I played a couple other guitars at this price point that did not impress me nearly as much as this one. So what I want to do now is just hop over, take a look at MARKO'S guitar and see what he has to say, and see if we have some similar thoughts.
So we had a really nice overview of Dan's guitar. Let's check out mine, also 2019, and the Green Lemon Fade. And I'm purposely starting with the case. I've owned since 2000, well, not since 2012, but I've owned 2012 reissues and up, and pretty much owned every year 58s and 59s, all the way back to 2012 when they were still doing the fingerboard in two pieces, and really the pro buckers before they even did the custom buckers. And I mean, right off the bat, I'm not going to mess about. The 2019 is the closest to a real 59 I've ever held in my hand, having played a real 59. I'll tell you, the 2017s is when it really started getting real damn accurate. And by all means, listen, the older guitars I had were phenomenal guitars. I'm just referring with respect to actually being a clone of the 59, and the cases now are just absolutely insane. We still have the same, you know, fancy schmancy, but it's just, and I tell you, let's open it up and then we'll go a little bit more into details. But I do want to refer to the case for a second, and here it is. And Green Lemon Fade, just I think one of the nicest tops I've ever seen in my life. Not too much, not too little, just absolutely. And I tell you, the video doesn't do it justice. It's so hard to describe the VOS because it's not shiny, it's not matte, it's just look at the aging. It's just so unbelievable. But we'll get to the guitar in a second, and just, man, there's that smell, and the custom shop smell is a little bit different than the regular Les Pauls. They have a little bit more of a intense smell to it, just different. But look at that thing, just absolutely incredible. But look at the case now, what they're doing exactly how in the 59 they have that little insert here, and a little back bedding there. And actually, this came out with it. I want to be careful here. And there you go, it's safe. Has a little bit of an insert there too, so really cool. Let's see what you get with the guitar. In this case, it being a 59, 2019 59. Of course, you have the 60th year with the serial, and you know, your little pamphlet there, and it's really cool. The original hand tag, but this is now paper and all. Remember, unpotted. You get like the authentic and then handwritten serial, and really cool. The back plate, which I'm going to change since I prefer that over the diamond one. But let's actually have a look at the guitar a little bit more in detail. So keep in mind that the whole idea here is to make this guitar perfectly imperfect. And here it is in a little bit of sunshine, and I really want to before we get to the sound, just go over the craftsmanship, which is just incredible. The frets are flawless. The rosewood is flawless. This is Indian, not Pau Ferro, remember, or Bolivian, which falls under Pau Ferro. Just, man, the aging is so incredible, and I tell you, just the video doesn't do it justice. You just have to really. It even has a little bit of checkering there that they did. See right there on that button. You see that little checkering? That's all right there. You can see it in the. It's just so incredible. There's even a little break in the button. That's all on purpose. Even on that one here, you can see a little bit of a. But it's just, look at that wood. Now this, and just look at this particular. The waving you have in the. It's just incredible. The piece of wood, which is super hand selected, and this maple is much lighter. The guitar is 8.2 pounds, non-wave relief, of course, and that's just incredible. It just shows you to what lengths they go to find a top that really has that authentic 59 thing to it, because there's also some reissues that are a little bit more flashy for the modern type player that wants the 59 specs but kind of likes super flamey, and this is kind of, you know, this is almost a little bit too pretty for a 59, but then it has certain aspects to, like from this angle, which it's not really cool. It's flamey, wavy. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible. It has a little bit of a deeper groove here, like they had in 59, so it's not super smooth. That's all on purpose. And then the back, just you can see the finish. It's just incredible. I tell you, I have played 59s a couple of times, even a real 60, and I'm just, you know, I'm a total fan of anything Gibson 59 and 58 and 60, and this is just absolutely, and it's hard to point out. You can see there's actually a few not mistakes, but it has a little bit of unfinished spots, and it's not as pretty as it shows here on the camera. It has a little bit of some matte spots that you can't really spot. It's almost shinier on the video than it really is, and just the neck is incredible. You can see and I'll show you here. You see that this is always a giveaway, whether you look on a Fender, Eric Johnson, or good guitar, but when you see like that double grain, that's the sign that it's quarter sawn. It's like it's always like, it looks like checkered, faded. I'll show you right there. See right there, this is that grain that always is a giveaway that it's quarter sawn. Right there, you can spot it in the middle. See, it goes that way. It's kind of like a crossing, and just it's just incredible. I mean, really, the craftsmanship is just stunning. There you see those little spots I'm talking about, faded spots. That's all on purpose. Hide glue construction, tubeless, and just look at that head, man. I mean, they even aged this more appropriately, angled it a little bit more. This is incredible, absolutely incredible. Let me zoom here. Look at the detail. I mean, and I mean, damn well be for this price point, obviously, but it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. Let's take a look at the electronics.
That's a good idea, Marco. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of that wiring. We just had a nice overview of Marco's guitar, and now we're both going to give you our impressions on some of the wiring here. First thing I'm noticing, though, I can actually see the figuring of the maple top through the back here. That's pretty cool. There's a little spot right there. You see that little bulb patch? It looks like they missed actually finishing that part of the cavity. That's kind of interesting. So I can actually see the bare maple. Pretty sweet. Actually, they've done it in a couple places. But the first thing I'm noting here is the paper and oil capacitors. So this is the first year they're doing paper and oil caps. Tone-wise, on full blast, probably not going to notice the difference between, you know, like a film capacitor or like a paper and oil, whatever, Mylar, whatever else they have out there. Rolling it down, it's still controversial as to whether it makes a huge difference. The biggest difference you're going to hear is parts variances, or tolerance variances rather, in the parts, but I like to think it makes a small difference. I don't know. But at this price point, it's an awesome feature to have in there, and it is more historically accurate than what we've seen in the past. So no more fake bumblebees. Thanks for that, Gibson. The one feature that I'm a little bit conflicted on, look at the pots. They're Gibson branded. Obviously that wouldn't have been done in the 50s. And like I said in my overview, I don't buy these because they're 50s clones, but I don't know how I feel about the Gibson branded pots. Once again, not going to affect the tone though, and nobody's going to see it. So you got the bus wire helping to complete the ground circuit there. That's pretty cool. Overall, I mean, the job, Gibson's known for being a little messy with their wiring. Not really a huge deal. I don't see anything that's going to cause problems. All of the leads are covered with their relative cloth sleeves and everything, so I don't think anything that's going on is going to make a ton of noise, but not the cleanest work either. Doesn't bother me, just something to note. Now, one thing I do want to try and get a look at in here, yeah, so if we look, I don't know how well you guys can see the branded or the braided strand. I'm going to try and zoom in. Okay, that's too far. See how close I can get. That should be enough.
All right, so do you guys see right there where they have that braided wire? And you see how each strand is like a double strand? There's 2 pieces of wire per strand. That's actually correct to what Gibson would have been using back in the day when they wired these guitars up. You would have seen this on the old PAFs and whatnot. So that's a pretty cool detail to have in there as well. I'm pretty sure they've been doing that every model year. I haven't looked that closely, but it would make sense. There is some triple braided wire out there available now too. I think some guys are using that, but this stuff would actually be historically correct for the period. Once again, minor detail.
At any rate, other things to notice in here, there's not really a whole lot else. You can kind of see the lacquer along the walls. I just wanted to get a visual for you guys so you can see the inside of these control cavities. 500K pods, obviously. I guess I should mention that. And that's really about it. So let's go over and see what Marko has to say about his wiring and get some of his insights. All right, Marko, here you go.
Here's another real nice view of just the aging, and you can kind of see. Here's that grain I talked about, you know, the quarter sawn grain, and you also see it on the, actually on all the necks, you know, on the Wolfgang, on the N4, whichever necks are quarter sawn. And then here, I'll show you, kind of see just that finish. So you see those little spots, it's almost unfinished on certain things, and all on purpose. But this is really, oh boy, this is just, it's kind of guitar porn here, and I'll lay it down a little bit so you can see it even better. And this is a huge difference now, because really the bumblebees before 2017 and 18, they weren't real bumblebees, and this is actually paper and oil and unpotted, and there's most definitely a difference with respect to sound and feel. But just beautiful, hand wired, and just, I mean, you know, if you're into this kind of stuff, this is good stuff. Even the pots are aged. It's just so cool. It really, really, really is cool just to kind of see where it all happens. You can see where the maple top meets right there, and just super, super cool.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you just a quick comparison of my 2 historic reissue guitars. You're going to see a video here in just a moment where Marko is going to compare his historic with a USA model. The only USA model that I have is my Studio, which sounds fantastic, but I think a lot of the people watching this are going to be well aware of Studio versus a historic. So I figured it'd be kind of cool to see these 2 historics compared, contrasted side by side. Anyway, I'm just going to go over some of the differences real quick. First one I'd like to point out, the Gibson logo. I talked a little bit about this in my opening video, but there you can see the more squared off G, and the angle of the logo is slightly different. Still pretty close on the angle though. One's yellow, one is regular pearl, whatever they're using. Les Paul logo, a little bit more spaghetti script, better historically accurate color. Normal, what we're used to seeing, Les Paul logo. Let's get up on the inlay colors. Kind of what we're used to with a Les Paul right there. Also, that fretboard's a little bit lighter too than some historics that I've seen. Even my studio fretboard's actually darker. Interesting, but... And here we have the slightly more accurate in color inlays, darker fingerboard, etc. Coming down on the pickups on these are not wax potted. The pickups on these are wax potted. So the shape of the covers on these I feel like are slightly better than these as far as historical accuracy. These look a little more squared. These have a little bit more of that TV shape. Both are VOS. Switch tip on this, slightly different color. This one's a little more accurate. This one also has a much more pronounced line on it. I don't know how well you're going to see it here. Kind of getting there. You can see the maple cap. For everybody that posts, is this normal on my guitar? Yes. On this one, you can't see it as much. They kind of finished over it a little bit more. But it's definitely still there. Kind of cool. Other than that, those are the big things. The other things, I didn't pull the control cover off of that. But the pots are not Gibson branded, and that has the not paper and oil bumblebees, so there's that. I've also got some bleeding. Everybody will probably say, you know, that's a quality issue, but that's just the finish bleeding into the binding. That's pretty normal. It's also happening here on this one. That's really it as far as big differences. The tuners look pretty much the same. I'm kind of debating about the glue. I know I said that in my first one. I didn't know how big of a factor it was, but I'll do another video about that maybe. Made with Titebond, hide glue. Correction, the neck joint is done with hide glue. Everything else is done with Titebond. I'd also heard the rosewood fingerboard was affixed with hide glue, but I haven't been able to confirm that. I definitely know the top was affixed with hide glue. This one, all glue joints are hide glue, so that's pretty rad. All right, Marco, take it away.
So we had a few requests to compare the reissue with a regular production model, if you will, and I almost chose a 58, my 58, but that didn't make sense, and neither did the Slash or the Tribute. The next closest thing that would make sense to compare it to is the traditional, and in this case, here's the beautiful Rob Roy Les Paul, which actually made the most sense, even more so than one of my standards to compare it with, because the traditional is really to me, the best Les Paul, production Les Paul, if you want some of the traditional features, minus, let's say, now the 2019 50s or 60s specs, which, you know, they split up the options, which kind of splits up the traditional model. So the obvious, I guess, is just that obvious. You don't have the aged hardware, gloss finish. This is VOS finish. You know, the binding is wide on these, as you can tell. Here it's very thin, the way it used to be, the binding. You can see right, this very nice shot, the difference in headstocks. You know, this is a wider headstock and these are a little bit narrower, which here they're a little bit wider. You can also tell the Les Paul logo is further down. Here it's further up. I'll give you side by side, so you can see also the Gibson logo itself is tilted by about 3 degrees more than it is on that one. Truss roll cover, of course, was blank back in the day. You can also see by the wiring studs, they're much flatter and narrower than they are here. We have, well, we turn it around. Also, the traditional is much heavier because the wood that they use is much more hand-selected, special, older and lighter maple. And here's a nice shot. You can see just a narrower headstock. This is not quarter sawn, interestingly enough. Yeah, I can't, no, it isn't. Yeah, it should be though. Maybe it is and I can't tell. But clearly here again, you can see that checkered grain. You know, on the interesting when you compare this. This is just really nice to have this side by side. So you can see the heel, and here how it's flattened out. And remember, here it's much longer. The way to set it in, it's much shorter on the newer models. You can see the cavities are the same. And let's see the cap, the way it sits too on the heel is a little bit different due to the shape, and the tenon being much longer on the 59. You know, there's also another thing, and I'll show you that, which is really cool. Again, just to have these two side by side, and I'll show you what I mean right here. Just give me a second to set them up so they don't. Here's one of the cool things. You see the pickup on that. The plastic here is actually much deeper. Look how thick that is. Front. I'll zoom out a little bit, see if I can catch both for you. There you go. Yeah, there's a good thing. So the plastic, the way the pickup sits, you can see here on this one is much thicker. So see, look, it's just thin and thick. Look how thick it is here, much thicker the way it sits. Okay, so again, just really cool to have this side by side. You can also see the body carve here, and just kind of, there you go, the depth of it. And then here you can kind of tell that it's a little bit narrower. I mean, they're cut by machine, but the carve and the hand finish and the sanding, you can tell, is much more delicate on the reissue than it is on the production models, you would think. Then ABR, adjustable bridge. Here you have the ABR1, which Ted McCarthy designed, and here you have the Nashville. This is really cool to see this side by side. You can just see right off the bat that this is narrower and thinner, and this is a little bit wider. And also the ends go kind of like into a tilted triangular shape here. They are perfectly rounded. It's just a much beefier piece. One of the biggest differences, which is huge, is that when you look here, if you see, the bridge has a saddle and it's screwed into the metal rather than into the wood. So the actual saddle here, see, is, see if I can catch it. There you go. So the actual saddle here, if you look, it's my nail, that's for classical guitar playing, so if you wonder why I have long nails, here, that's a metal piece which is into the wood, and then this metal piece screws into this metal piece, and you adjust with the thread going into the metal piece rather than in the wood. As you all know, as I'm sure you do, that is not the case on the 59s. It doesn't have that metal pocket. It goes straight into the wood. Now, you're not going to do a lot of adjustments once it's set in, but that's the beauty of it. If you keep threading on this over time, you'll be wearing that wood out, and it also will bend sooner than having an actual pocket as it does here. So it's really nice to see that side by side. You can just you can also see the massiveness of this and the thinness of that. You also have the grooves here are enclosed. So you see the grooves are enclosed by the frame. Here, the nuts are exposed. And let me zoom in for you, right there. You see, you can actually access the screws from the top. And I'll give you a nice shot from the top for both. And that definitely makes a huge impact on sound, and also intonation stability and tuning stability. Well, not so much tuning as intonation, but then again, that's the charm of it. So these guitars couldn't be more different. Also, this one has 57 pickups and custom buckers. So even though it was, you know, it's fascinating when we think about it, both Les Paul models, but they could not be different. Different pickups, different ABR, different woods. Well, same woods, but different wood selections. So even within the wood family, a gigantic difference. You know, you can see the H knobs, they're a little bit more pointier, where you of course have the point volume number pointers, if you will, the metal pointers, selectors. It's amazing when you think about it. It's the same guitar, yet it isn't even close to being the same guitar. So seeing them medium jumbo frets, these are medium jumbo too, but if you can see, it's going to be hard, but I'll point it out. These are actually slightly taller, and these are a little bit flatter. Okay, so and of course the nut is much different. Great thing, I remember to point that out, because it is flatter and more rounded done by hand. And here you have that typical modern sharp kind of edge and round off. So really fascinating when you think about it, just that these two guitars are the same, yet they could not be more different from one another. Both spectacular instruments, obviously, one mimicking 1959 and today's modern Les Paul. This is actually a cute video, besides Layla here. For you guys who don't know, here's an actual nice side-by-side of the cases. And you can see the original cases back then were much narrower. They're also a little bit less on height. I guess it's fair to say, I don't know about the less protective part, but it's definitely a more delicate case. You know, you also have a back hinge here. You don't on the reissue. Obviously you have this beautiful brown tapered checkered pattern. And just, you can just tell the oval shape here, and kind of the more rounded shape on that one. You can definitely tell that the newer cases are a little bit more robust, if you will. The cases back then were much narrower. They're also a little bit less on height. I guess it's fair to say, I don't know about the less protective part, but it's definitely a more delicate case. You know, you also have a back hinge here. You don't on the reissue. Obviously you have this beautiful brown tapered checkered pattern. And just, you can just tell the oval shape here, and kind of the more rounded shape on that one. You can definitely tell that the newer cases are a little bit more robust, if you will.
All right, guys, so we just had a look at MARKO'S cases. Now what we're going to do is have a look at a couple of my cases. Now, I don't have any USA cases anymore. I sold my 2007 Les Paul Standard last year at some point when I was buying one of my historic reissues. And I don't have the gig bag that came with my studio either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare this new 2019 historic case to, I guess, what would be considered like the previous generation historic case, the standard historic case. And I'm going to kind of go over some of the features of those. So what I'll do here is I'll start with the
2019. This would be considered the true historic case, and I think Gibson's been doing these for a couple of years. And I honestly can't tell you all the tiny little features and changes and everything, but let's get a look into it here. First thing we're going to look at is these latches. So these latches are a little bit more historically accurate, actually. Got the Gibson custom logo there. Looks like they tried to age it a little bit. And then they actually put this latch on there, which I really like. I think that's a good feature. It's a nice safety feature. Kind of have one going the opposite way. I like those latches a little better, but let's take a look inside here. So what we're going to notice in the case, I do keep those. Oh my gosh, this smells so good. I don't know if anybody that's had the opportunity to take a whiff of one of those. You know what I'm talking about. Talk about that Gibson vanilla smell. There it is. So what we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at some of the smaller details of the case here. So the first thing I'd like to point out is actually inside they've got this really cool badge. I'm going to turn my flashlight on so we can kind of get a look at it. It just says lift in, and I think it says built like a fortress or something like that. Either way, it's strong case, but built like a fortress. I'm going to have to argue with that a little bit. And I'll tell you why. The case is, you know, it's strong, you know, well built. The outside's pretty hard. But one of the features I don't like, it's got the neck cradle here, but right here, you're not going to see any neck support or back support or anything. There's a very faint hump, but I don't know that that really counts. And here, there's no additional neck support, so the neck kind of just falls back at an angle here, and I don't know. So that way, when the headstock's sitting in the case, I can't even fit my index finger between the case and the headstock, which for one of these guitars, yeah, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Gibson does have this piece of foam kind of jammed down in there when you get it, and that does give it a little extra neck support. And then you'll also find this piece of foam jammed up in there. So they do isolate the headstock when they send it, but at the same time, still a little dicey. One thing that is cool that I do like is that actually comes like that to protect the end pin. I don't know that it's an issue you'd really run into, but I know with some guitars there's a concern, especially shipping, that the end pin bumping up against the bottom of the case, if the guitar takes a hard hit on this end of the case, it can cause the end pin to run up into the guitar and split your body a little bit. I don't know. I'm sure that's probably happened to somebody at some point, so I do put that in there when I'm traveling with it just to be safe. But going in here, so first thing, you know, you get your case candy, 60th anniversary, 59, case candy. Mine was actually a NAMM guitar, so I get this little piece of information here, which is pretty cool. And then I also get the Gibson certificate of authenticity with the spiel, you know, buying a piece of history, etc., etc. But the book is pretty cool, so that's pretty rad. You know, actually, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier because I'm shooting these videos on different days, but I actually thought this was a 60 when I picked it up because of the neck profile. Check out that neck profile on that thing. There's my 58 for comparison, and that's a slim 60s. Look how thin that is. Like, that's pretty crazy. I had another 59 reissue that I sold to help get this one, and the neck was a lot thicker on that thing. So those are sort of the main features. I don't think these cases have very good headstock support. They don't have very good body support. The guitar kind of moves around in the case a little bit, which kind of was the case with the older ones, but just makes me uncomfortable. So if I'm like traveling, I actually won't use this case. I actually use the other case that I'm about to show you guys, And it's the one thing, like the true historic case, I would actually rather have the standard historic case for this guitar, and I would totally trade this for one of the standard historic cases if it wasn't a NAMM guitar and I wasn't worried about having all the original stuff. But so I'm thinking about trying to find another one of these cases, or at least a really good case for transporting it. I know my buddy Jordy uses the chainsaw 3rd generation case. Maybe I'll look into one of those or try to find another one of these, because this case, ladies and gentlemen, is amazing. I love the standard historic cases. First thing we'll take a look at is right here. Built-in pocket for your end pin. Gold. Look how much thicker the sides of the case are. When I tell you that when I put my Les Paul in here, it fits like a glove, I mean it kind of squeaks on the side of the case because it fits like a glove. Look at all this body support. It actually lifts the guitar in the case slightly, and that back support for the back and right where the neck joint is. Beautiful. But here, 2 neck cradles. I can get my hand up under the headstock, between the headstock and the bottom of the case. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what these cases should be built like. This is the one area where I'd say, to hell with being historically accurate. Let's just build an awesome case. And my camera's not focusing. Cool. Also, get my flashlight. And we'll illuminate that. That's just to get some extra light in here. Protection on the top too, to keep the guitar from moving around in the case. So this case is much better. My conclusion on the cases is I do like the standard historic cases better. So be that as it may, now we can kind of see what the different cases look like.
I'm doing a quick insert to give you a resonance check, and this is just where you see the difference between a custom shop and I mean, I don't want to say regular Les Paul. I love my 50s tribute as much as I love this, but I'm just talking with respect to resonance. Now, listen to this. Listen to how loud this thing is, okay? Listen, I'm just going to play whatever random chords, just simple stuff. This thing is so brutally loud and resonant. It is, you know, it's just a dead giveaway of the quality of the wood, and I wanted to share that with you. It's unbelievable how resonant it is. Very, very impressive. So I'm gonna keep it super clean for you when comparing these two. Remember, this is not about which one is better or worse. They're both phenomenal Les Pauls. It's just a question of what are you after with respect to reissue or you know, your, which one is which? But you know, I'm just gonna keep it very simple, some licks in the box for you to compare the sounds and maybe some open chord voicings, and that's just the beauty. They're both phenomenal. You know, 59 traditional, and let's just see the difference. As a matter of fact, if you want my personal opinion, I don't prefer one over the other. Yes, of course, custom shop, phenomenal value investment, etc., etc. But You know, there's a time for a Bentley and then there's a time for a Ferrari. Depends what the occasion is. But unbelievable how different they are. Even though they're technically the same model, they could not be different from one another. Let's hear the difference in sounds.
All right, guys, Marco couldn't be here to say thank you because he's either playing a gig with the Vaticants or he's on his way to Alaska in his Ferrari to steal another Les Paul from Rob Roy's guitar collection. So on behalf of Marco and myself, we just wanted to say thank you for watching the video. If you like the song at the beginning, it's called Eastern Sunset. It's by the Vaticants, and Marco is the guitar player in the Vaticants and is also one of the founding members. So do check that out. It's on an album called Church of Denial, which is their most recent release, and it's a fantastic album as well as a fantastic song. If you guys have any other questions about the video or the guitars in the video, feel free to leave them down below in the comments section, and Marco and I will try to address those and get those answered for you. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.